It is January 9th and we're at 10:06 a.m. This is the first Finance and Administration Committee meeting. Call to order. First on our agenda today is public comment. If you have a public comment, will you please direct your comment to the chair? State your name, city or township where you vote, and you have 3 minutes.
Morning, Sheila Detloff, Holland Township. I didn't see the Ottawa Food Coordinator resolution on the agenda for today. So I just want to remind you of a few things board members have said about it in their own words. On September 12th, Sylvia said about Ottawa Food and 3 other programs, I believe there is a desire to keep those in full funding. And yet in the final budget, health, education, and nutrition together were cut 48%. You can't cut 2 line items by 48% and still promise that there are no cuts to those programs. So Commissioner Zylstra moved to amend the budget and transfer money to cover the Ottawa Food Coordinator. And all of you voted no on that motion except for Commissioner Curran. So you said you wanted to see Ottawa Food covered, but then you voted no when presented with an option to fund the key role that made it happen. So that brings us to November 21st, when Joe and Sylvia were determined to humiliate Lisa Ugansky. Ms. Ugansky informed Joe that the dollar amounts for Ottawa Food had been sent to John Gibbs the week prior as requested. Commissioner Zylstra asked about a motion to put it to the Finance Committee. Joe replied, I'm sure the chair of the Finance Committee will be taking it up. You didn't. And there's hopefully going to be a lot of ongoing discussion this week. There wasn't. And Sylvia said, we asked the health department to come back if they had needs. Having food for our people, especially people in need, is really important. And so we need to have reliable people accessing the board when they need help and using appropriate processes. Of course, anyone with half a brain knows that step should never have been necessary. But apparently when you're up in an ivory tower, you aren't able to do math. That was November 21st. Next up was the December 5th finance meeting. Still not a peep about Ottawa Food. Later that same day at the Health and Human Services meeting, Marcia Mansory made a formal request to using an appropriate process for funding for the Ottawa Food Coordinator and specifically asked for it to be added to today's agenda. I reiterated that request in my public comments a week ago, as a matter of fact. And now here we are on January 9th, 4 months after this was first called to your attention. Although the health department did everything you asked, I don't see anything on the agenda. I'm guessing you're all going home to a warm dinner tonight. Not everyone in the county is that blessed. I don't know if they say this in the Quad Cities, but in Dubuque, we have saying, it's time to shit or get off the pot.
Thank you. Are there any further public comments?
Good morning, Dina Arner, Holland Township. I look around at the board members who are present today, and I noticed that you have successfully changed the composition of this committee to make sure that there are no dissenting voices in your ear as you make the decisions that affect all members of this county. You have removed members who question your allocation of resources for the public health that affects all members of this county and made sure that this is now effectively an echo chamber. So while you sit there smug in your belief that you are super patriots who understand freedom better than anyone else, be assured that those of us on the outside looking in know that that is not the truth and that you are certainly not walking the walk of letting freedom ring for all residents of Ottawa County.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment? Going once, twice, 3 times, moving on. Next on the agenda is consent resolutions. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from December 5th? Oh, I apologize. See, I'm a little rusty from having a month off. Roger, you want to take over? Sorry. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
I'll support.
Support. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And motion passes. All right, moving on to the consent resolutions. Is there a motion to approve the meetings from December 5th, 2023, Finance and Administration Committee meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next, we move on to the agenda and action item requests. First on the agenda is the election of a committee vice chair. Suggested motion is to elect Roger Belknap as vice chair of the Finance and Administration Committee for 2024. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Is there any discussion?
I'm willing to serve.
You're willing to serve? You are therefore nominated. Can we go to a vote by name, please?
Mr. Belknap,
Belknap?
Mrs. Curran,
Belknap.
Mr. Moss,
Belknap.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Belknap.
Ms. Cosby.
Belknap.
Belknap is the chair.
Thank you.
Vice Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Belknap. Next on the agenda is action item 2, statement of review. The suggested motion is to approve the statement of review. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there support?
Support.
And do we have any discussion? Seeing none, since statement of review includes money, can we go to a voice vote, please?
Mr. Moss,
Yes.
Mrs. Curran,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
Ms. Cosby.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to action item number 3, it's accounts payable for November 2023 through December 21st, 2023. The suggested motion is to approve the general claims in the amount of $12,014,246.38 as presented by the summary report for November 2023 through December 21st, 2023. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Great. Is there any discussion about accounts payable? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and go to a voice vote.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
Mr. Moss,
Yes.
Mrs. Curran,
Yes.
Ms. Cosby.
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you. Next on the agenda is quarterly financial status report. Suggested motion is to receive for information the detailed financial statements for the general fund and mental health fund, as well as a higher level of summary for the special revenues fund through the end of the fourth quarter of fiscal year 2023. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
In discussion. Karen, I had a couple of questions. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good morning.
Good morning. So as I was looking at on this page 45, just more questions than anything else, and hopefully you can help me out here. Fines and forfeits. We had an increase in what we had projected for revenues. It went from $82,100 to $129,742. Do you know offhand what generated that extra revenue?
I have I don't have the agenda, so I'm not sure what page exactly you're on.
It was 45 in mine.
Is it the
I'm just.
fourth
curious if maybe
page in?
Cheryl would even know
It was
that.
third, I think. Third page.
Third
maybe.
page in?
Your revenues general fund.
I guess I don't know exactly what the additional funding was. That's, 40,000 over budget. I'm not sure exactly what drove that. I could check and get back with you on that.
Thank you. And then I definitely want to invest in the same things that the county has been. The interest on investments was very significant, so that was positive.
Yeah.
Need to know who you have, yeah, as your broker.
There's actually a budget adjustment or with the on the agenda today where we are adjusting the current year estimated revenue for interest income.
Okay.
Asking Amanda Price and Cheryl before they to take another look at that for this year
Okay.
because we well exceeded it. And so this year we did make another adjustment, which shows up on your budget adjustments today.
Okay. So before they pass the baton. Yeah. And then what goes into other revenue? That line item, because that one's another one that,
Right, so that's a lot of miscellaneous items. The actual exceeding so much by 6.8 million, that was that class action. The reason that you're seeing such a large increase there was a class action related to water, the EPA and water development. I think there was some discussions between the Water Resources Commissioner and the county administrator regarding that class action. It was kind of unexpected and it came during the summer. So that actually got reported in other revenue.
okay. Sense. So, and then I want to say under expenditures, I want to say kudos to Community Action Agency. It's at 100% and the probate court, which is pretty impressive. There were a couple of the business units that had kind of significant differences between like what they budgeted and then actual expenditures. I want to say like, and I should give kudos probably to Paul in strategic impact, but wondered, because it looks like we made budget adjustments and then things maybe didn't go forward as anticipated, using strategic impact as an example. We originally budgeted for 1.8 million, then it was amended to 2.3 and change. These are just rough estimates, but the actual turned out to be 1.5.
So what you might be seeing there is, I know that there was some initiatives that Paul was working on that were underway. And so the savings were just initiatives that are probably ongoing. And I think there was $1 million appropriation, and maybe Paul might want to jump in.
Yeah.
But for development, and I think he's still working on that plan. We did continue that in this budget.
Okay.
So it's something we talked about during our budget meetings
Okay.
to prep for this year.
Perfect. Just wanted to ask that question.
Some of the other savings too, if revenue replacement, so you might be seeing some underspend related to
In
revenue
several
replacement in
departments.
ARPA.
Is that what it
So,
was?
mhm.
Okay.
So they're generally departments, it's very difficult to actually spend 100% of your budget. Community Action Agency with that 29,000, that's a grant that's set up, paid directly. So it's budgeted for exactly what's paid. And so that, because a large majority of community action grants are in a separate fund that you're not seeing here. And so this is very specifically one grant that we pay to 3 or 4 different organizations. So that's why you're seeing that. That's
Stay on the penny.
right. Yes, that's not an easy thing to do.
The other commissioners have any questions?
I also wanted to just mention that this is preliminary. So we are currently, our 9/30 is our fiscal year end. And so this is a preliminary look at where we are. And the auditors will be here early February to audit our financial statements. The board, the finance committee and the board will be presenting our final statements. Usually that happens at the April meeting.
Commissioner Moss?
Just one question, going back to the interest. I know there was probably a significant reduction in interest during some of the COVID years due to, many different factors. Is that part of what we're seeing there, where now it's kind of coming back up to where we might expect it maybe to remain?
I'd have to defer to Cheryl about having it remain, but I know that it's long before COVID. We've experienced challenges with interest really since the Great Recession. I think it's been something that we've seen for a very long time. And so this is, I think in my 10 years, this is probably the best we've seen for interest earnings.
Thanks.
Wonderful. Any other discussion? I had one request and it's under the County of Ottawa fiscal 2023 document. There's special revenue funds.
Mhm.
Can we break out, because I think they're two different things, the mental health millage from the mental health grants as two separate line items? Does that make sense?
That is one fund.
Okay.
And I have had conversations with Lynn about maybe separating those. So I'm gonna continue to have those conversations, but right now we do track the mental health millage and grants all in a single fund. So that's how it's reported.
Just with the millage coming up for a vote again in 2026, I think it's important that the taxpayers are able to see kind of the amount of money that goes into that fund.
Mhm.
So. Commissioner Moss?
Are there a lot of grants in that fund?
Yes, there are a significant, that is where I know the millage is probably, well, we could look at the revenue under taxes, but there is a significant amount of,
I can follow up separately. That's okay.
sure. So, well, I mean, on the detail sheet, a few pages later, you see oh no, I'm sorry, millage and grants is not separate. That's the CMH. I think the millage is between 3 and 4 million.
Okay.
So anything above that would be grants.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. Do any of the commissioners have further questions of Karen? Seeing none, we'll let you
Just
go.
thanks as always.
Thanks as always.
Mhm.
So, all right. And so we will go ahead. Let's go to a voice vote to approve the quarterly financial status report.
Mrs. Curran? Yes. Mrs. Wenzel?
Yes.
Mr. Belknap?
Yes.
Mr. Moss?
Yes.
Ms. Cosby?
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you. Next on the agenda is the FY 2024 budget adjustments. Do I have a motion to approve and forward to the Board of Commissioners the FY 2024 budget adjustments per the attached schedule?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
And is there a discussion? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and go to a voice vote.
Mr. Moss?
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel?
Yes.
Mrs. Curran? Yes. Mr. Belknap?
Yes.
Ms. Cosby?
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you. It looks like we are on to discussion items. And we have a presentation today from Habitat for Humanity, Don Wilkinson and Dave Rosman will be our presenters. Good morning, Don.
Good morning. Thank you, commissioners, for taking the time out of this meeting to hear what Habitat has been doing. You'll see the first slide talks about Habitat and Jubilee, because Jubilee Ministries is a partner of Habitat. Together, we serve the population in Ottawa and Allegan counties that make between 30% of the area median income and 120% of the area median income. On the next slide, you'll see just kind of a breakdown of both of our organizations. Jubilee has 3 employees. Their operating budget is about $447,000. But the one that I want to draw your attention to is the Vista Green project that we're working on together at a projected Jubilee cost of $1.4 million. And I'll get more into that here in a minute. On the next slide, you'll see that Lakeshore Habitat, we have 16 full-time employees. Our annual operating budget is $8 million. And in 2022 and 2023, we built 13 dwellings together. So that is just kind of a quick overview of what we're doing. To give you an idea of our home buyer profiles, a typical Jubilee buyer is a professional degree, employed by a local employer. They live in the Holland-Zeeland area, and they're usually under 30 years old. This would be the first house that they've ever owned. The typical Habitat buyer is a high school or GED equivalent. They're employed by a local employer. They live in the Holland-Zeeland or Hudsonville area, and they usually have children, and they make between 30 and 60% of the area median income. I want to go into a little bit of detail on how Habitat works. So we are a hand up, not a handout. We are all about home ownership. Everything that we do is for home ownership. In order to qualify for a Habitat house, you have to be making between 30 and 60% of the area median income. So between $27,000 annually and about $60,000 annually is where our families fall. What they have to go through is an application process. They have to have a credit score above 600, and their debt to equity ratio, including the mortgage that they're going to receive from Habitat, has to be less than 40% of their total income. So the approval process is not that unlike a bank. They're going to spend time with our financial people to understand what their payment's going to be monthly. Their taxes and insurance will be escrowed into that payment, and then they'll receive a mortgage that with taxes and income escrowed in at less than 30% of their income, which is what the national standard should be. So our typical mortgages run about $170,000, and our home buyers are typically on time with their payment. And so their actual mortgage ends up being about $500 to $700 a month. So the next slide just kind of talks about the housing crisis. And I don't need to go into that. You guys know exactly what's going on. This slide gets updated just about every time we do the presentation. If you go out and Google the 49424, 49423, and 49464 zip codes, you'll find that there's usually less than 6 houses in the price range of $250,000 for sale in that area. So it's real. Most builders are building for $300,000 and more. If you look at the area median income right now, a single person at 100% AMI makes about $63,000 a year, and that's for one single person. That family can afford a house of $218,000. So that becomes a problem right there when you can't find a house under $250,000. The biggest problem that we see happening in the area right now, and we talk to a lot of area employers, they will go out and hire somebody, especially like a young professional. They'll get a job offer, they'll get an acceptance, they'll bring their family here to take a look and see what they can afford, and they have to decline the job offer and look someplace else. We've heard that from Gentex, Ventura, and several other manufacturers in the area. So that is why this is becoming an issue. The next slide talks about a family of 4 at 100% AMI. That's right about $100,000 now, which is kind of blows me away because I can remember being excited when I saw salaries of $100,000, and that's the area median income. The people that we serve on the next slide, a family of 4 at 60% of the area median income, they make right at $60,000. The mortgage, like I said earlier, is approximately $160,000 to $170,000 from a Habitat house. And Lakeshore Habitat and Jubilee are the only 2 builders building for home ownership right now with houses under $250,000. So that brings me to the fun part of the whole presentation, to get to see what we've been doing lately. So you understand what our buyer is and what they're looking for. But if you take a look, we just finished a project, our first joint project with Jubilee Ministries. We built 10 homes just off of 40th Street in Holland that we call Park Vista Place. Jubilee built 5 of those homes, Habitat built 5 of them. And there's a breakdown on this slide that talks about what the average home cost was to build. and also what the average buyer was like that moved into this neighborhood. And you can see all the Jubilee homeowners were college graduates, and all of the Habitat homeowners were locally employed, some caregivers, some in construction, some factory workers. Really neat neighborhood. It's quite diverse if you ever go in there and take a look around. But we were very pleased with how that worked out. The way we were able to do that, though, was through philanthropic dollars, through a federal home loan grant out of the Pittsburgh Bank, and then also the city of Holland was able to give us a brownfield TIF, tax incremental financing, to help us cover the infrastructure cost. So that was our first project. On the next slide, you'll see the project that we're working on currently. This is called Vista Green. This is on 36th Street, and I apologize, both of these projects are in Allegan County. We really want to do the same thing in Ottawa County. That's why I'm here. But this is off 36th Street, so South Washington and Holland, to the west behind the medical buildings. This is going to be a neighborhood of 42 homes. Habitat is building 18 homes, and Jubilee is building 24 townhomes there. So the Habitat homes, we've actually got 3 complete. 4 of them are under roof, so we can work through them this winter, and the 2 foundations in, so we can start right away on the spring and the first 9 of to finish up the first 9 of phase 1. We've got phase 2, all of the infrastructure's in, and we'll be ready to start on foundations next spring as soon as the weather breaks. The cool thing about this is we're the only ones that are doing projects like this. Back several years ago when I started with Habitat, the big question is, can you scale up and can you do more with partnerships? And in this case is why we arrived where we did with Habitat and Jubilee. The other thing that I will say on this one as well, this was a piece of property that the city of Holland owned that we were able to purchase, but we had to do that competitively, so we paid market rate. The second piece of this property was owned by an individual that we were able to purchase from him. And again, the city of Holland was willing to do a brownfield TIF on this to cover our infrastructure cost. So the rest of this was all raised through philanthropic dollars. On the next slide, you'll see what Jubilee is working on. Their townhomes. The one on the left is a 3-unit townhome. The one on the right is a 2-unit townhome. And they're still working on raising money for that. If you go to the next slide, you'll see what the Habitat homes are. All the Habitat homes are 1,300 square feet. They're 3-bedroom, 2-bath. And they have a 2-car garage, because one of the things that neighborhoods tend to complain about is not having any place to store stuff. So Habitat reached out and to the neighbors, learned what they were looking for, and actually puts a 2-car garage on there to cover that. And you can see those first 3 are complete. All the floor plans are the same, but one thing that we always do is try to make the exterior look different. And we have 9 homeowners ready to go into these homes. The next slide just kind of shows you an aerial view of where we're building this. So I wanted to share with you a little bit about our future projects. If you look, it takes about 2 years by the time you finish a project in order to get into the next project. So we want to be ahead of that. Like I said, we scaled up and built 13 units last year. This year, we don't want to let that slide. And we're on pace for that. Next year, we want to keep going with that as well. So you'll see that we're already working on a 12-unit infill product in the city of Holland, which is actually in Ottawa County. We're working with Jubilee on that one, where we would do 6 units and Jubilee would also do 6 units. That would all be townhomes, but again, all for home ownership. We are working also on a 17-acre parcel. We have a donor that is interested in donating that land. That would be a joint venture between Habitat, Jubilee, another nonprofit that I'm not able to say right now, and probably some market rate builders, but we would work with the market rate builders in order to build homes that were in the neighborhood of under $300,000. So probably 1,800 square feet. Our goal on that would be that we would figure out how to do the infrastructure through different grants, through the brownfield TIF, possibly even an employer stepping up to pay for the infrastructure, knowing that they're going to get their money back over time. And then we could have lots at a much lower cost for the private builder. So, and in addition to that, we've also, it's not in here, but we're working on another project with another employer who has property that we may be able to have donated to us and work on that. So jumping into the next slide, why am I here this morning to talk to you guys? I think it's important that you understand how Habitat does their financing. We get very little money from any kind of government entity because it's almost all for rental properties. If you look at LIHTCs, both 4% and 9% LIHTCs, that's all for rental properties. If you look at any other options out there, it's almost all for rental properties. We're trying to do it for home ownership. So that's where we come in, and we have to do that through mainly philanthropic dollars. The community of Holland and Zeeland have been great for us, and we appreciate all that they do. But until we figure out a way to put some kind of grant money behind that, we're going to be stagnant at what we can build every year. So that seems to be the problem. Two other things that I want to show you real quick. You've seen the developments we're doing. These are two projects that Habitat did on their own this year. The first one there is called Haven Townhomes. This is actually, I'll say it was an experiment when we started doing it. We loved it and we'd like to do another one. This is actually 5 units, all 1 bedroom, about 720 square feet. This is at the corner of Beeline and Felch, right behind Lowe's. And this property is for adults with special needs. All 5 of our adults that are going in there they have a job. They're also on Social Security disability, and this is the only way they're ever going to be able to afford a home. The mortgages on these are going to be about $120,000 for the total mortgage. So it's something they can afford. So that's a unique project that we're doing. Unfortunately, when you start to get into people with disabilities, there's such a broad spectrum, from people like the ones we're serving that can live on their own, all the way up to people that need 24-hour care. We're just trying to grab a slice of that and work on that. The next project you see is called Buttermilk Creek. This is actually in Hudsonville on Prospect Street. Both of these projects are complete, by the way. We're just waiting to close on the mortgages. These were 5 townhomes that we built, 1,600 square feet. Again, 30 to 80% of the area median income is who our homeowners are going to be in there. And this is really a joint venture that we did with the city of Hudsonville on a couple of properties that they owned. So it was a great connection with them. So I just kind of wanted to get into the last slide there and talk about our obstacles. You know, Lakeshore Habitat had to decline the MISHDA Missing Middle Grant. We were one of the first ones to ever receive that right when it came out. However, we'd already started on our project. And as that grant kept unfolding, because they hadn't figured out all the process through there, we found out that there were restrictions on that grant that we just couldn't abide to. One of them being the Davis-Bacon prevailing wage. If anybody that knows anything about construction in Ottawa County, you are paying a prevailing wage, but the paperwork, all of the stuff that went along with that, we just didn't have the staff for it. That really caused us to be about $400,000 short on the Haven Townhome project and the Buttermilk Creek project. Development costs, one of the things that we continually run into in order to even find out if we can build on a piece of property is we have to lay out about $40,000 to $60,000. And that's to get the environmental studies done, to get the engineering done, to find out that you can go to the planning commission and get it approved or denied. So that's another obstacle to doing it. Infrastructure, roads, water, sewer, all that can add up to $600 a lineal foot. So that's why when you start to see these developments around the county by the private developers, you're looking at a lot that's $100,000. Well, that all has to go into that cost. Through the brownfield TIF, we're able to mitigate that. Being a nonprofit, we pass that savings right along to our homeowners, which cuts the cost of their lot down by about $30,000. But the problem again with that is we get that paid back to Habitat over a long period of time. So they can range anywhere from 10 years to 30 years. Again, we don't have the money up front. We're borrowing money. We're giving a 0% interest loan. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out we're losing money. So that's why we're a nonprofit, I think. We'd like to break even. So, you know, with all those things, even the federal home loan grants, those all come after we get the projects built and closed. And so the problem that we are running into to be able to scale up even more is to have that capital up front. I know that through the ARPA money, we put $10 million into that revolving loan fund. We've talked to them about that. That $10 million, they're charging about 5% interest on that. And that it just doesn't add up with the projects that we work on. Ryan Kilpatrick at Housing Next will say that, you know, we're going to have to start to subsidize houses at about $100,000 in order to be able to reach the buyers like Habitat and Jubilee reach. Both Habitat and Jubilee have got that subsidy down below $70,000. So while it's still there, we're doing it much more efficiently and much faster than what they are. We also get accused of not being able to scale up. Well, we're the only ones in Ottawa County that are building houses in that range right now. So I think we're at scale. At least we're the biggest scale that they have. So with that, I know I went through that rather quickly. I'd love to have questions, comments. Would love to offer up any kind of tour if you'd like to see the product that we build. All of our homes are built to Energy Star standards. Typically, a Habitat homeowner will live in their home for 30 years or more, so it's not a problem of them flipping them, but we do have ways to protect that in case they do get a job transfer or need to move houses, change houses. They don't get to take all that equity with them. But the Harvard Joint Center for Housing still says the best way to build wealth in the United States is to own your own home, and that's what we're all about, is breaking that cycle of generational poverty.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So just so I understand, so these individuals have to go through an application process. Then if they're approved, they move into the home. And then is it their home and they can sell it when they move?
So the
How does
way,
that work?
I'm sorry, the way the application process works, once they are approved through a pretty rigorous application process, then we will start to build their house. So they don't get to move into the house right away. It takes us about a year from the time that they're approved to the time that they move into their house. During that time, we give them 2 financial planning classes. We give them a home ownership class and a home maintenance class. In addition to that, they have to put in 250 sweat equity hours per adult. So that's kind of their down payment, if you will, even though we do require a $4,000 down payment. That sweat equity is working in our restore, it's working on someone else's house, and then it's working on their own house. So we're really building that desire to own a home into that. Once that's complete, we give them a mortgage through Habitat at 0% interest that can be anywhere from 20 to 30 years, depending on their income. And that's always based on 30% of their income. So we calculate that out so they know what that they're going to be making. If they live in that house until the mortgage is paid off, it's 100% theirs. They've got all the equity. They can sell it. They can move. If they sell that house within the first 20 years, they get to share some of the equity, but the rest of that equity comes back to Habitat that we put into the next house. It's worked quite well for us. It's kept the houses affordable because we can turn around and put another homeowner into that house, again, following the exact same model that we did. But it also keeps them from moving into a house, living there 5 years, turn around and flip that house and take all the money and go buy a bigger house. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
It's quite complicated. And one thing I do want to add too, along with that, is we right now have about 85 mortgages that we are holding. Out of those 85 mortgages, I only have 2 homeowners that are more than 30 days behind on their payments. We're actually better than a financial institution right now.
Commissioner Moss?
So just a few quick questions and maybe comments. I really appreciate the focus on ownership. I think that's very positive. I guess maybe we should just meet and talk. I have lots of small questions. Maybe just generally speaking. So it sounds like you build different types of homes. There's some multi-unit, there's some, standalone, single family unit. Do you have a preference, or do you see one work better than the other? Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, so we were actually able to build the multifamily homes in Hudsonville for about $200,000 a unit. Right now, all-in cost on a single-family home is about $230,000. So we actually, it's cheaper to build that, but we don't really have a preference. We're trying to, in our portfolio, we really want to have multi-bedroom and multi-family homes as well. So we'd like to have a home that's a 4-bedroom home that we could serve that population as well. But it depends on the land we have. I honestly have been talking to a couple of developers and Park Township a little bit. We'd like to build some small houses for teachers. If you're a single teacher, we'd like to get into that realm, and Jubilee as well. They've built all different kinds of homes as well.
How about, I guess, from a high level, what is the main need that you're trying to meet? Is it new? Is it building new homes, or is it the financial assistance piece?
Our main need is just to build the homes.
Okay.
So, because our homeowners, they get Michigan down payment assistance if they qualify for that. But beyond that, that's what they get. Everything else is on their dime, as well as the building of the houses are on our dime. Our biggest problem is right now we've got a gap of about $400,000. We typically do not start building until we have a capital stack put together. Which we thought we had. So that's typically what we run into is we get that capital stack put together and then we start building. Our biggest thing right now is having some money to go out and do some development work ahead of time. So if we could, this 17-acre piece of property that we're looking at, that's a $3.5 million investment in infrastructure. Brownfield TIF is great, but I still have to go out and raise $3.5 million. And then over the next 25 years, I get that money paid back on a regular basis. So that's the problem that we run into. We need that capital up front. And here comes my development guy, Dave Rosman, who has much better words about that.
No, I think, Joe, kind of answer your question from a bigger perspective. Our vision is a community where everyone has a safe, decent, affordable place to live. That's just not the reality. And what we're doing is we're looking at a part of the population that otherwise would not have an opportunity to own a home in our community, and we're providing that opportunity.
Stick around. I'm the operations guy. I know how to build a house. Dave gets the money.
So how about like costs? Sounds like costs are comparable to like private construction. I'm sure you have deep dives on that. But is that accurate? Or if you're going to build a single family home, is the cost like relatively the same?
Actually, we do it for quite a bit less.
Okay.
So we use volunteer labor. About 2,000 volunteer hours go into every home. So where right now the average cost for a private builder to build a home is somewhere between $250 to $300 a square foot on a starter home. We're about $200 a square foot, sometimes even less. We source virtually everything locally. So Zealand Lumber, Overijssel, they're all our friends. They help us out with cost as well. A lot of times selling things at a discount to us because they know what we're doing. We stick with subcontractors. Our roofing contractor, TNT Roofing, volunteers and puts all the roofs on for free. So we actually do it for quite a bit less than what a private builder can do. However, we still have to pay the same for infrastructure and land and those kinds of things.
How about your volunteer, base? Like, do you work with the same volunteers? Do you do projects with, churches or groups or something like that?
We'd love to see a Commissioner Day volunteer. No, we work with everybody. We've got a volunteer base we call the regulars that come out on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays. And they are a lot of retired folks that do that. However, Gentex, Disher, they've all hit over 3,000 volunteer hours with us. I could go through, and Yang Fing would be there if they would have stayed Prince, JCI, and then Yang Fing, but we always started them over just to keep them going. But yeah, we get a lot of churches to volunteer. We have licensed contractors on site for every build that we do. So you don't even need to know which end of a hammer, and we can put you to work.
Okay. If you work with an employer looking at land or something, do they then get to determine who moves in? Are they working specifically for their own employees? Is it like a
We're kind of working on that right now.
Okay.
We've had an employer approach us. We will not change our habitat model from a home ownership standpoint and the
Right.
qualifications. But it might be a situation where, because we're habitat, we can get the brownfield TIF. We can reduce the cost of a lot. Also, because we have such great partnerships with some of our builders, we think that we can get them to come in and build a home. And at that point in time, the employer would have a chance to get into some of those homes or some of their employees. But from say, this is kind of our vision. If we could build 30 homes on one piece of property, Habitat would build 10 under our actual model. Jubilee would build 10 under their model, and then the employer would have 10 homes that they could provide for their employees.
I think it's
Understood.
important to note that just like any other builder or realtor, we follow fair housing laws.
Yeah.
And so that's actually something we're investigating, is talking to other habitats around the country. And we've learned of other habitats that have done specific builds, say for teachers, and been able to do that successfully. So we're trying to build off of the partnerships that we have nationwide to learn what others have done.
Cool.
Any other questions?
That's it for me.
Just had
Commissioner
one.
Belknap?
Thank you for this, and appreciate Joe kind of talked a little bit about the volunteer thing, because I saw that missing on the slide, and I just think about Habitat for Humanity, and it is a very volunteer-oriented organization. Can you speak a little bit about the standards for folks with disabilities and a lot of the challenges that come with, you know, you have to build for kind of a general, but yet individuals may have certain things. So I imagine that's kind of a challenge to, you know, standardize, you know, like barrier-free and, you know, access points, that type of thing.
Yeah, so one of the things that we do is all of our homes are what they call visitable. They're not necessarily 100% handicap accessible, but they are built so that you could take a wheelchair in to the home. A bathroom and a bedroom would accommodate that. We have not gotten into getting into any specifics for a handicapped individual in a wheelchair or, you know, some other special need. We did build a home for a fellow that was legally blind, his family, and we made some adjustments on some lighting and some, actually, as funny as it sounds, the color of paint we put on the walls, you know, to help him be able to navigate his house more. So we do that, but we want to stay out of the custom home building realm if we can. So.
And then back to the volunteers, is there, I imagine there's protections for folks, because sometimes, you know, sites could be a little dangerous, you know, things happen. And that's not a barrier for folks to, if they want to help.
Right. We carry builder's risk insurance and all the things that we need through a company called Lockton that does habitat insurances across the country. And so we, you know, they always sign a waiver, but as you well know, waivers are as good as, you know, whatever they want to fight with. But we, you know, follow my OSHA rules on our sites, probably more so than most builders, making sure that we have hard hats, safety glasses, making sure that they're trained on running power tools. We also make sure that when a volunteer shows up, if they say, you know what, we're afraid to get on a roof, we don't say get on the roof. You know, we let them stay down. If they don't feel comfortable running power equipment, we don't have them run power equipment. There's always something to do on a job site to accommodate everybody. So yeah, we're very safety conscious about those things.
I was gonna say, actually, our biggest need is painters. Nobody likes to paint. Everybody wants to swing the hammer, use the power tool, frame the walls. But when it comes to painting, our regulars just not into that. So it's a big issue.
There's that Commissioner's Day. I love paint.
Yeah.
So I really truly do. So,
That's true.
yeah.
One last question.
Yes, go ahead.
One last question. Where, like in the last year or two, I'm looking maybe into the next year or two, where are you building currently?
Okay, so currently we're in Allegan County, just off of South Washington and 36th Street. That's called Vista Green. That's the development we're doing there right now. The next 3 projects that are on a horizon are all in Ottawa County. They are in Holland right now, within the city limits of Holland, but that's just where our property is. We'd be glad to Hudsonville wants us to build something else over in Hudsonville, but we've not been able to find a piece of property to build on yet.
So land is part of the major
Right.
factors. There's, a lot of growth in like Jamestown,
Mhm.
Georgetown, that area.
Yes.
But even if you wanted to go there, the land would be one of the, or maybe the lack thereof
Right.
is a factor.
And it always helps us if we can find land that at least has water and sewer close by.
Yep.
That's one of the big things that we always look for. We're working right now with a developer in Park Township to see if there's something that we can do there. That they've got an option on a piece of property where we could build a few homes in there. But yeah, and we're really striving to do mixed family or mixed income in our neighborhoods. That's why the partner with Jubilee works so well, because now we go 30 to 120. Are the kids growing up in Habitat homes get to see professionals living across the street? Maybe their teacher lives right down the block from them. And that's what we want to make thriving communities is what we're after.
One of the things I just want to add, and we didn't cover it in today's presentation, but our main program is home ownership. We also do what's called critical home repair. And we're doing that in Ottawa, Allegan, and we're hoping to do that in Van Buren County as well. Recent study came out showing that the average age of a home in the United States is 43 years old, which is the oldest it's ever been. And they estimate $60 billion is needed in repairs, critical repairs for low-income families. So we're trying to look at this from another angle and say, okay, if there's a family who's low income who already owns their home, but they're struggling to maintain it, how do we help keep them in their home? So that's another avenue that we're trying to grow as well, to be able to meet that need so people don't lose their home if they're already in one.
Like that. An awful lot. So yeah, looking back at your slides here, $64,000 is the average income level here in our community. And you have apartments right now that are renting anywhere, and they're even income based too, for $1,200 to $1,500 a month. It just makes sense to me that we, look for an opportunity to have a mortgage and home ownership at $500 to $700 a month. One of the things that I really enjoyed when I met with you was your discussion about the, hand up, not a handout. And then also the application process and the 250 hours of sweat equity, homeowners associations and that community involvement. And now hearing that we're mixing populations so that you can actually have mentorship even in the neighborhood. You're building a thriving community. I do know this price point is a real difficult price point to find. And we don't want to subject people to permanent rental if they don't want that too. And we just don't have that next step. What next? So how can we help you? And I hear you say we have upfront capital needs.
Yeah, so one of the big things again is just upfront capital. If we, we need $400,000 from somewhere that we're working on to cover the cost of our first two projects or the last two projects that we did. But one of the things that we really want to do is just continue with being able to put the infrastructure in. We like the brownfield TIF. We think that buys ownership into the communities. And so that's an avenue that works well for us. We continue to apply for federal home loan grants, but once again, those are a year-long process to apply for. And even though they're called federal home loan grants, they're from the federal bank, not the federal government. So it's Pittsburgh, it's Cincinnati, it's Indianapolis, those banks that other banks go to. They do it for community reinvestment credits that they receive. So we've been able to apply for those. That helps us. But once again, we have to raise all the money and then that money comes back into us. So one of the things, and I'll just kind of give you guys some round numbers to think about, but at the pace that we're building, if Lakeshore Habitat had a couple of $1 million, if Jubilee had $1 million because they're a little bit smaller than we are, and then Tri-Cities Habitat up in Grand Haven had another, $500,000 to $1 million, you could see us all accelerate the pace of affordable housing. And we could do a lot more, a lot quicker. And also along with that, the philanthropic dollars come along quickly when they look at it and say, look, everybody else is helping out. We can jump into this. just to give you a quick idea, we needed to raise $2.4 million to do our Vista Green project. That was in philanthropic dollars and then everything else in capital stack. We started that in April of 2021. We started to raise that money. By fall of April 2021, the community had responded and we had $2.1 million pledged. So it's not like people look at Habitat and go, more affordable housing, we don't want to help. They see what's going on and they back us up with their gifts, and we appreciate that.
Your homes are very attractive. They blend nicely into the community, truly. So yeah, there is no one solution, but yeah, having a local solution is really good to learn about. Definitely. I think I told you Authentics, I heard was an Ernst & Young project too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And I know Robinson Landing is an area that in Grand Haven, that's a very successful housing project. I think that was 32 homes there, but that was also a Michigan Community Capital Project. Know those guys well. They're what they call a CDFI. We're trying to figure that out, how that works and how to spell it, honestly. So.
Wonderful. All right. So what I'd like to do is give the commissioners an opportunity to meet with you. And I'm hearing $400,000 as a potential ask here. And then invite you back for the next finance and administration meeting and have you on our agenda.
That sounds good. I'd be happy to meet with any and all of you anytime you'd like. So, thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Appreciate it. All right, and moving on to committee reports, we have Cheryl Clark here with the Treasurer's Financial Month End Update.
Hi.
Hi, Cheryl.
So Amanda prepared this, the last one. Should say this was her last one that she prepared. It was, so included in your packets are her report. And I thought I would just go over a little bit with you about about our office's role in this and then kind of go through the report. First of all, the Treasurer's Office acts as the bank of the county. We collect all of the revenue and then invest it to meet the needs of the county. The Treasurer's Office is bound by state law on how we may invest that money. Public Act 20 of 1943, which is titled Investment of Surplus Funds of Political Subdivisions, outlines 2 provisions for the treasurer to follow. The first one is the types of investments that we may invest in, which are bonds, securities, and other obligations of the United States, and the certificates of deposit, savings accounts, and obligations of this state or any of its political subdivisions. The second provision is that the county must have an investment policy, which your board has approved for us. And that outlines 5 things: safety, liquidity, management of risk, return on investment, and yield. So we make sure that we follow all of those while we are choosing our investments. So going through the report, you'll see you have 4 charts. The first chart is the investment distribution by maturity. That is a breakout of all of our open investments for pool cash as of November 2023. The second one is the investment distribution by maturity. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, by maturity. So that is the bar graph. Yeah, the next one. That shows all of the investments maturities up to 360 days and beyond. And then the third one is the historical comparison by month, which shows the dollar amount invested over several years. So this is kind of where you asked Joe Moss about the how we've been doing in investments over the years. This kind of shows that for you. And we are doing much better than we have in the past. like if you go back to 2020, yeah, we're doing better than that. Yeah.
It was down a bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
And then the fourth one was the monthly interest yield. This also kind of goes through over what you were asking about. You can see that our actual 2024 and 2023 is higher than what the benchmark was. The fourth item that was included in your packet was the Ottawa, the County of Ottawa Retiree Health Insurance Trust Statement. This is something that you will receive every month. The retiree health insurance plan was established and is being funded under the authority of the county and under agreement with the unions representing various classes of employees. The county's funding policy is that the county will contribute recommended amounts as determined by an annual actuarial valuation. The continuation of medical and dental coverage is offered to retirees who are at least age 60 with 10 years of service or after age 50 with 25 years of service. The exception is the unclassified benefit group. Though employees retiring from this group must be at least 55 years old with 25 years of service or age 60 with 10 years of service. The Retiree Health Insurance Trust funds all of those benefits. Does anybody have any questions?
Unclassified.
Yes.
But who is in that category?
So unclassified is not a group T.
Not a group. Okay.
Yeah, or a group that is in the unions, I believe, right? Yeah.
Non-unionized.
Yeah.
Employees. Okay. Are there questions of Cheryl? Doesn't look like it. Appreciate the overview. Thank you so much and
Thank you.
welcome.
Thank you.
All right, trying something different here. And it's just, we're going to do a status of 2023 initiatives. We had things that we funded last year and into this year, and just want to know kind of where we're at and give the leader an opportunity to share kind of current status, any assistance that they might need, and then also brag about what their achievements are. So first up is update on budget software, and Administrator Gibbs is
Thank you, Chair Cosby.
sharing. Thank you.
So this has been a good process. We've evaluated all three players in this field. There's basically only three vendors that offer the kind of budget software that we could use as a county. And we have decided on a vendor. And so we have the contract. And I believe that there is back and forth right now between Corporation Counsel and the vendor. And I believe that should be finalized relatively soon here and expect to move forward with that. My hope is that we can leverage that for the FY25 budget process. It will be a tight timeline because we've got to get it installed and hooked up to Munis, which is what we use for our financial system, and get everybody together and get it working. But I believe that we're on track to do that as we keep moving it along. So I think we're in a good place there.
Can we push on making sure we have it for 2025?
Yes, absolutely.
Commissioners, any questions?
I would just recall as part of that, we have a new team member.
Yes.
Just kind of an update on acclimation and getting prepared and all of that.
Yes, I'm not sure if Karen is still around, but Karen can speak to that.
New position to support the software, correct? Yeah, and training.
Yes, that position was filled. The individual started late November. His name is Tyler Weavers. So he is currently, reviewed all the software with me and has been actively engaged in that selection. He was an analyst in fiscal services a few years ago and then left to go to work for a school system and then has come back.
It's wonderful he was involved in the selection process.
Yes,
Yes.
I was very happy that we were able to fill that spot so he could be from day one because it's critical to understand.
Thank you very much.
I would also add that in addition to just the budgeting software, there are certain things we want to look at that are not necessarily related to the software directly, but impact the way we want to be viewing the budget in the future. For example, having a more straightforward way to view breakdowns by department and by program, and to view expenditures by program and FTEs by program. Now, those are things that in our current system, it takes a little bit of gymnastics in order to get that kind of information, but we do want to make that easier to access. Part of the solution is already done there, and that was the chart of accounts upgrade we did last year that fiscal services did a great job on to our financial system, which allows us to view things by department and program easier. But we'll be having in parallel, as we get the budgeting software running, discussions on how we can make sure we can view information not only by fund, and the fund is important, but you had the question earlier, for example, in terms of community mental health, breaking down the grants versus the millage funds. Precisely those kind of things we want to be able to break down a little bit easier in our budget process this year. So I expect that those will be good conversations. We want to integrate that as well as we do the budgeting software.
And for each business unit, really being able to understand cost of service. I think it's helpful for the taxpayers too, as the leadership is reporting out to the Board of Commissioners or the Finance Committee.
Yes, we expect that this software will be able to help us with that. And I'll be sharing more on that, my next update here in a few seconds. Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, we'll move on to the next agenda item, and that's an update on facilities usage analysis. And Blake Upright. Morning, Blake.
Morning. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Happier now there's snow?
I know.
I'm a little
pretty finally. It's not
disappointed.
so brown. Yeah.
We actually had to remove snow, so
Isn't it melting right away?
not fast enough. So kind of what I put together was a presentation on the how to fix that door back there. The space planning, but kind of hearing what you had mentioned on this. Do you want to also hear about all the CIP projects we're working on?
Really what I'm looking at is like, we have how many different buildings in the county?
Yep.
And then are we using that space in a way that is efficient?
Mhm.
And is there opportunity if we're not using space to do something different with it? I saw some hoteling in here somewhere
Yep.
in our finance reporting, but
Yep. Okay.
yeah,
Perfect.
so, and you needed some time, of course, to make a total assessment, but just what your thoughts were.
Yeah.
Oh.
No, so we can go through the PowerPoint presentation. I tried to attach it and email it this morning, but it's too big, so I'll have to send you links to it.
Thank you.
So Ottawa County Workplace Space Planning. So kind of the direction the world's going since in the post-pandemic era, I guess we'd call it, is hybrid, kind of a hybrid telework type situation. We had people used the hybrid work from home model as needed to meet needs, and employers used it. So prior to that, prior to 2020, the average office space in a government building was used at about 88% of the space. What we're seeing now, like in 23, obviously 24's numbers aren't out yet, but 23's, we're down around 40 to 45%. A lot of contributing factors to that. However, looking at it and looking at our buildings and what we see, it's we're somewhat fragmented with all of our departments and all of our buildings and how they operate and how they do. It'll take a concerted effort kind of to point that in the right direction. Some groups that I've talked to are much more on board with this. Some are, well, they just don't believe it's possible. There's other groups. We have groups in this building who kind of championed this probably 4 or 5 years ago, and their office remodels and started down this path on their own, just out of foresight, I guess. So we do have a mix. So it really is going through looking at our space. We have 14 buildings. We have 751,000 square feet of building. Now I don't have that broke down into exactly what, courtroom, how many courtrooms we have, how many, we have 100 and out of that 750-ish, we have about 160,000 square feet that there's just no optimizing. Administrator and I have talked about this. There's not a lot of ways to optimize the space usage in the jail. I'm guessing there's a lot that want to work from home. It just isn't possible. So there's been kind of a mix of what I'm seeing. And as our departments have trouble filling vacancies, they're having to evolve. You know, how do they work better? You see a lot of empty space here and there. It's not necessarily one department on this day. So it's, with all that rambling, what we get to is kind of the way that this would have to go is, we can go through the slides now, Jordan, thank you. What's the reasoning? The growth in the county, a lot of our buildings were built in the early 2000s. Population has grown, bigger needs, more staff. Obviously, if you have the same footprint, you have to become more efficient with that said footprint to house more staff. The benefits of doing a study like this and implementing it is, one would be to cut operational costs in the current spaces, attract and retain talent. There's a lot of our environment, you guys know, is we have some very high level global entities that we compete with for staff. They're already doing a lot of this. So attract and retain talent. We can reduce our carbon footprint through utility usage, increase productivity with collaboration and different, more focused efforts. Then at the end of the day, employee happiness. If you have a good work-life balance and you're comfortable in your workspace, you're happier. So strategy. Leadership would develop a strategic plan to identify the needs, wants, and goals. Where would you like to go? What exactly would you like to see? I've seen, looking back at a lot of our studies and different things with vendors, we often historically have, from my department's perspective, have asked for things we didn't know what we wanted. And we got information that's not super usable. Our fault. So I guess to push this along, it would be kind of form a focus group committee or the board and kind of spearhead that with work together and find, what do we want? What are our goals? What do we want to try to achieve? And you know, I think I understand what you want to achieve, but just kind of put that down. And then that way we have it so that when we go out with Karen's purchasing group for assistance in this, because I think a third party vendor is the ideal situation, then it doesn't look like we're very biased as to how it gets done. So, and honestly, there's a ton of technology out there that is, it's really interesting. I mean, we can put sensors in office space. We can tell you based on carbon dioxide levels, how often the space is used, light levels, all kinds of things like that. It's the technology and AI is just going off the charts. So, so the steps to do this, once we have that goal, yep, we would assess the telework capabilities, basically do an assessment of all 20 plus departments of what can you do? Like going through working with their leadership, what technology do you need? Obviously, a lot of court stuff can't work from home. Some can, some can't. Let's identify what can and what can't. So then you perform that gap analysis of what you need. You'd make an action plan. You'd involve the staff and stakeholders to kind of get that buy-in ahead of time. And then perform that data capture with that third-party vendor to create the plan. Once you have that, then it's really kind of working with that vendor to, how do you want to see this? Do you want more, you know, and like, how do you want to see the space? Do you want to see it more like neighborhoods? You know how we have a conference room booking software so that you can go online, you can book the conference rooms. We can do the same thing with a desk or an office. So it's scheduling and planning is where the efficiency really comes in. It's a lot of people aren't used to that, so it'd be a big change. But I think working from home is a huge benefit and worth the effort of planning. Why a hybrid office? It reduces the amount of office space per person, decreasing the total amount needed compared to traditional office environments. Employees split their time between home and workstations. Sharing and hoteling can be implemented to reduce the overall number of workstations required. Thus, obviously, it's cheaper to put in 15 workstations than 30 workstations. So there's a cost savings there as well. A reduction, just talked about that. And then kind of one of the things that we saw probably 2010 and up to 20 is we packed as much in as we could. The cube farm, the just pack it in as tight as you can, and it gets really dense with people and clutter. So part of the trend now is to, by limiting the number of desks and booking and scheduling and planning, you open that up. It feels like a better environment. So there's some pictures at the end of this to look at. You can go to the next one, please. So an outline. Incorporate the change management. Once we get that direction and we get the plan, then we incorporate the change management. We undergo the discovery process, perform that needs analysis, assess the technology. What do people need to have at home? What do they need to have in the office? What kind of scheduling technology and such? We do the programming, incorporate the flexibility and adaptability, plan for employee health and wellness, and then develop alternatives and conceptual designs to present for approval. One of the benefits of this that people are realizing, and it's quite interesting, really. I thought when I first started this, that private sector, schools, different institutions like that would be leading the charge in this. Government agencies are some of the top groups in utilizing this kind of space planning and change management, trying to get more efficient. Obviously, limited resources, use them more efficiently. I can't remember exactly which. I think there was a college in Missouri, maybe. They had after the pandemic and everything went to virtual school and everything they went through, I think they ended up decommissioning and demolishing 9 or 13 buildings because they didn't need them. They just basically looked at it and said, we don't need to put the money in. Let's move people, change how we do things, and we'll tear 9 buildings down. So they did. Obviously, I don't think we want to tear buildings down just yet, but those are the extreme instances. So go ahead.
Oh, no, there's just looking at your space, like it ultimately, it sounds like you've got 590,000 square feet that potentially could be subject to a plan to decrease costs, improve efficiencies, and are there alternatives for or workspace use? What I hear you saying is that you would like to have kind of not just an assessment, but pull together a group for like a wildly important goal. Yeah. And then look into kind of a strategy as to how to do that. I mean, we will have a strategic planning committee, but I'm wondering if this would be something that you'd want to do separately, if in fact we agree that, there's some opportunity here. Because are we paying for buildings that we don't, not the whole building, but
Right.
Is this space that's available for hoteling? Is this space that's available for another department to come in, for instance, since we're starting the new veterans department? I mean, there's just some ideas, and it feels like it should be your group and then other leaders that would be impacted by that, led by the county administrator. I don't know if that's work that we'd want to do off the strategic planning committee or kind of incorporate it, maybe make it your goal and then meet subsequently.
But I think there's an opportunity there. I mean, if you look at the whole picture, it's quite overwhelming.
Right.
If we break it down, if we look at like the Fillmore Administration Building, these are like the top buildings as far as out of space. Fillmore is one of them. There's opportunity here, though. There's a lot of opportunity here. So would it be simpler in a strategic type way to pick a building and do a sample?
Create a template.
Create a template. Does this work? And if you can pull it off there, then it's a ripple effect that goes out of this is possible. The world didn't end.
Yeah. And it's like, even, I think you were talking about consultants, and I heard you correctly, a third party, like even having Disher in this area as an example, but kind of process engineers help you out with that.
Yeah.
I don't want to, and Paul, Mr. Sachs, I don't know if that's some work you do too. So as I'm spinning ideas out here, might be, you have that support mechanism internally as well. But
That was, Paul and I had a conversation on it, and that was kind of one of Paul's recommendations. Was I was getting a bit overwhelmed looking at how do we get everybody on the same page. And he said, well, why are you trying to get everybody? maybe start smaller. So,
Yeah, and success breeds success,
Mhm.
right? Yeah.
yep. Another, even smaller building, they're doing a lot of this remote hybridization. CMHA building at James Street, it's 28,000 square feet. But there's, a lot of the cubes and offices down there oftentimes have 3 to 4 people working out of it.
Right.
So
Hmm.
there's
there
opportunities to kind
opportunity
of
there?
pilot a program.
Yeah, maybe it's that building you're
Mhm.
thinking, yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah, my idea behind adding this kind of committee report with the status of initiatives is to have you present and then let us know what you need,
okay.
so. And so with that in mind, I mean, you don't have to come up with it right now, but if you want to, send emails either my direction or to the board chair, county administrator, of course, as well, maybe we can by next meeting, kind of have that next step in place.
Okay, we can do
So,
that.
All right.
Yep.
For building usage. Wonderful. Thank
Okay.
you, Blake,
Thank
so
you.
much. All right. And next on the updates list would be Communications Department with Shannon Felger.
Hi there.
Hi.
Jordan is passing out some spreadsheets for you to look at. And I do have copies for the audience as well, if you want to help yourself, or maybe I can even put them in the meeting minutes or the packet or whatever
Include
is
those in the
feasible.
back.
But please feel free to grab what you'd like. There's 2 different sheets. One says communication metrics on the top, and the other has the fiscal years listed across the top. I will start, I believe, with the fiscal year sheet. So, technology has really afforded the opportunities to gather some great statistics. So I love, I've been in this type of role since late 1990, and these are the best statistics that we are able to get now, and it's just wonderful to really be able to measure success. There's dozens of data points for each tool that we use, and so what I do is really try to pull out the metrics that matter and relate them to transparency, awareness, and engagement for our citizens. So on here, we have some various tools that we use. GovDelivery, which is an HTML email tool. And then there's the group of social media tools we use: Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. And then we also have YouTube in there. And then we have a couple of printed items: the Ottawa Way newsletter and the welcome mailer. So you can see we actually started with GovDelivery in 2015. And I started there with fiscal years 2017 metrics. But really that year of the pandemic, we significantly increased our subscribers in our GovDelivery platform. People were hungry for information from the county. And since then, we have hovered around 130,000 subscribers, give or take. They are all valid email addresses. So anytime we send out information using that tool, the tool will deduplicate, so a person won't get more than one email, and it also validates that email address to make sure it's still valid. One of the numbers I wanted to point down to was the average monthly engagement rate for fiscal year 2023. 70% of our emails were being consumed by our recipients. The number below that in italics is the government industry standard for engagement rate, which is 59%. So we are exceeding that with our email reach. Last year, almost 1.4 million people received our emails, and actually opened our emails, rather. Probably a lot more than that received. On a monthly basis, almost 115,000. With social media, you can see that we progressively increased our reach over the years. So I won't go through all of those numbers. And then I will move on to the next page, which is more recent data. I meet with John regularly and share this information with him every month. So it is readily available for anyone who would like to see the monthly reports. But here you can see, again, monthly, we average about 100,000 or 100 communications going out via email, that HTML email editor per month. With our social media, we work really hard to learn and stay up to date on social media practices to meet the most people on those platforms, learn about the algorithms, learn about how people consume our content, what works best, what doesn't, that sort of thing. And then we did just recently send the Ottawa Way newsletter. So those should be hitting mailboxes very soon. If not already, I think some people may have gotten theirs. And I did actually, it was interesting that the roads were presenting in the last meeting because they actually have a nice little topic here on the front page of the newsletter, roads, who shoulders the responsibility. So, you know, people can learn how to get a hold of them because as we know, the Ottawa County Road Commission is not part of it's not an organization of Ottawa County. However, I think it's also important to recognize that it's all Ottawa County to our residents. Yeah. And so it's important to help one another and communicate and answer each other's questions, if you will. In fact, the Ottawa County Road Commission and Alex Doty there utilizes GovDelivery. So we kind of have that partnership. And, you know, when he communicates with residents on road issues, we all win. So new in 2023-24 on the bottom of that communications metric sheet, I wanted to point out, as you recall, all of the web updates and social media posts are now being processed through communications. And you can see there, I was actually really shocked to learn how many updates we are doing. So on average, we have about 100 updates to the website every month. Some of those web updates are very easy, you know, 15 minutes. Some of them can be 4 hours. So it just really depends on each update. And similarly, Ottawa County posts, I did put those down there just so you can see, again, just some tasks and some process metrics about how many social posts are being reviewed and processed through communications every month as well. I'm keeping very busy. The other thing I wanted to update you on is, again, related to the website. We are working right now on a website update and redesign that is fairly comprehensive. We work with a contractor called WebTex and their group of designated developers who all have various levels of expertise. The contract is actually under the IT department. And since the spring of 2023, I've begun to oversee these updates and work with the contractor a little bit more closely on the website. The last large scale redesign happened in about 2012. So this is the first one I've worked on. The update then was under the direction of the IT director and the deputy county administrator. So I'm coming at this very new, but it's very exciting and I look forward to getting into it more. A little bit more about our website. We have a very large website, approximately 700 HTML pages. That's actually smaller than I thought it was going to be when I first started this project, but we also have several thousand PDFs. That's a whole nother topic. And 40 active web applications on My Ottawa. And that doesn't include contact forms or embedded third-party applications, payment applications, that sort of thing. So we have a very large digital front door. In our citizen survey that we've been doing since 2006, we actually asked respondents to rank our website. And those who rate it poorly often cite too much information on our website. Those who rate it well indicate the reason for rating it well is a lot of information on our website. So you can see there's a conundrum there when it comes to our information on our website. But what that can really tell us is that we need to organize it well. What we're doing with this redesign is we're working towards site architecture to provide a consistent experience from department to department. We want to evaluate UX data, user experience data, user experience research, best practices with user experience, and bring those to our website. So in December, actually WebTex did hire a new developer to help us with this, and that developer excels in site architecture and user experience. So I look forward to working more closely with them. The website project, just to dive in a little bit deeper because it is a very large project. There's multiple parts. First, I talked about just overseeing the web updates on the current website. So in mid-August, we built that online process to submit the updates in a uniform format. We implemented in October, and that's that data that you see on the communications metric spreadsheet. I receive all of those updates, and the majority of them get processed without a hitch. There are a couple instances each month, however, where I do have to pause and evaluate the update. And in most instances, if an update is changed, it's not related to the content, but it's related to the user experience. So what can happen is we're all sitting behind our desk thinking about updating the website, accessing it from our desktop, when the fact of the matter is more than half, I think it's around 60% of our website visitors come to us from a mobile device. And in fact, that mobile device usage actually increases as income goes down. So for instance, people are more likely to have a mobile device, go to a free hotspot, even if they don't have service on their mobile device, and be able to access content, whatever their need is for county services. So, so making sure that our updates are user-friendly is very important. So as an example, we might get a request that says, can you attach this PDF list of classes on this training page? And so I've been able to stop and say, can we just list the classes on the page? You know, so kind of minimize that one click. For some reason, PDFs have become very popular, but they're not very popular for our users. And so kind of trying to step away from that PDF mindset. Other items, and this is kind of a less common one, but things like this can happen, is, you know, we had well-intentioned staff who were using a personal Google account to create maps to the locations of the prescription drug take-back boxes. And it was all for good reason, but it's just not the best practice that we want to use. And so what we were able to do is connect that staff with GIS, and GIS was able to create a map that's now county owned, county managed. And so it has longevity. When a person leaves, it stays with us, it can be updated with us. And it's just better to keep our personal accounts out of county business for various reasons. The other thing that's happening with these updates is, since they're coming into my view, it's really giving me a lot of insight as to where self-service updating needs to happen. So another part of this web update is going to be a CMS, a content management system with approval workflows. And I can see now where the bulk of these updates are happening, and which updates would be very easy to translate into a CMS. I mean, really, probably, I have a couple low-hanging fruit already picked out that I think can reduce our update workload by maybe 25% with just these two items. So that has been a good process. Another thing that we're doing with the web update is just doing a lot of auditing and cleaning. When you renovate, you've got to clean out the clutter. And the same thing happens with a website. We've got places in our website that have kind of become junk drawers. And so we just need to get rid of things, reduce deduplication, because anytime there's duplication, number one, it decreases our organization and makes it harder for our residents to find information. And there's oftentimes duplication of updates that need to happen. So we need to do that. It's tedious, it's manual, it's time consuming. We're using a spreadsheet, looking at all 700 pages, department by department, finding where we can combine and really going through all this all methodically. But it needs to be done. The design will really focus, like I said, on functionality and organization. So you might not see significant outward changes to the site. Our colors aren't changing, that's all part of the brand. So that will not change. You may see some differences in fonts and menus, trying to use some of that user experience research when it comes to organizing our menus. And then maybe even some things, and this is going to be really hard for departments to sometimes grasp and really want to get to, but think of things from a service perspective as opposed to a department perspective. For example, dog licenses feel like they should go under animal control, but they go under the treasurer's office. So where would our users, our residents, be more likely to find things? And so maybe putting links in multiple places for those sorts of things. And then the last part is implementing that content management solution to enable those autonomous, those self-service updates, because doing so will enable developers and other staff to focus on more complex tasks instead of these little day-to-day updates that can be done potentially by the office or the department with certain parts of the pages, certain menus locked down so that there's only certain places that changes can occur in that using that self-service content management system. We'll also develop a content style guide so that we can ensure branding and consistency. And we'll even include things right down to how we capitalize and what bullets look like and colors and how many items should go on a menu and what types of items should go on a menu. We have some menu items right now that lead to PDFs. So those aren't really the best places for PDFs. John and I have a whole sitcom written about PDFs. The timeline for this, I know this is probably everyone's burning question. Redesigning a website like Ottawa County's is a really large project, and I hope that you all will understand that. To be completely done, we actually estimate the end of this year, the end of 2024, but we will be making updates and rolling them out iteratively as they're done, but the ultimate full completion is we're hoping by the end of the year. In terms of going forward, what I hope to see in the future, particularly with the website, is I would love, and I think we actually budgeted for this, and Karen's probably not going to be very happy with me, but one of the things I want to do is invest in a chat bot. And I think we budgeted for it, but I don't think we're going to be ready this year. So it might be something that, and that's why Karen's probably not happy, because I might want to roll it over. But it would really aid in customer service. I don't mind the kiosk at our front door here, but what I really envision is a way for people to not have to come to our office if possible, to be able to reach us, whether it's service or get their question answered easily on our website and kind of have that chat bot available. People are adopting that type of technology more and faster than ever before when it comes to those digital touch points. So, I'd love this time next year to be here saying we're going to approve the contract for a chatbot. So that would be one thing I hope we can look forward to. And it's also a way that we can identify blind spots on our website. And again, back to that, it's all Ottawa County to me. We do have places on our website where we have services listed that other county entities in our Ottawa County offer. And so what we can do too is answer those questions in the chat bot instead of having the content within our website, which can cause confusion as well. There is a little bit of AI built into some chat bots, but from what I've learned about the chat bots that I've demoed, it's very much training. We train it. And so there's a lot of control with that AI. It's not going to be generating its own answers. It's only going to be generating the answers we want it to generate. Another item that I think is important to think about for the future is an app request procedure. So we have our website, which has the HTML pages, and then we have apps. For example, the agenda calendar that we use is an application that was built by WebTech. And we have a lot of those on our website. And those app requests for new builds or app updates have historically been prioritized and managed by the Deputy County Administrator and IT Director. And that chain of command has kind of fallen in the past 5 years with various staff turnover. And so right now we haven't encountered any issues, but in the past we have encountered issues where the app requests or the app update requests have outpaced our capacity. And so when that does happen, we should think about a procedure for who makes the decisions on what apps are prioritized. Right now, it's who screams the loudest, but that's probably not the best procedure to follow. Outside of the website, some projects, the citizen survey is potentially out there. I have it budgeted, and I think John and I are just kind of ironing out a few issues on that happening again. That's a survey that's been done since 2006, every other year with a year off because of the pandemic, and we didn't want the issues that were that our residents were encountering due to the pandemic to color the answers and have a big impact. And so then we don't have any usable data. So that's a potential project that's out there. Another item that I know, Rebecca, you had asked me about in the past is the digital communications position. We haven't hired or even posted anything about that yet. John and I have talked about it briefly. I think, again, too, we're just kind of ironing out a few items there. I have to say that one of the reasons is because I'm just busy. I have to admit, a lot of that is just part of me trying to get through my day to day. And so I know it will be kind of, it's a big lift, and then things will, kind of pan out, but just kind of getting through that hump. But I also want to manage the expectations and I guess ascertain your expectations of that program or of that position. During the budget process and during various conversations, there's a lot of talk about FTEs and, have the metrics. And, if you're looking for a digital communication specialist to double the metrics, I don't know if that's if I can deliver that. What I do know is that I really would like to delve into video. I know that having a person who can really do that is going to offer a different mode of communication for our residents, maybe a more meaningful, maybe more memorable mode of communication. And I do know that the person will be able to help with some of the day-to-day that I do as well. And that will free up some time for planning, for strategizing, for making really deliberate decisions on our communications. And one of those things is being able to utilize Gov Delivery more effectively. And that in and of itself would hopefully increase the numbers. I just don't know that they would double the numbers. That's a whole nother conversation, but we do have tools that we can use more effectively, more efficiently. We can equip departments to do things better and to use the tools and reach the audiences that they have waiting for them. So, you know, I just want to make sure that we're all, that we're on the same page as we go forward with whatever hiring we decide to do. That's all I have in my notes to cover, but I am very willing to take any questions you have. Talked a lot about technological things.
Question right away.
Okay.
Because, it's been 11 years ago since you redesigned the website. That's what I heard.
Yeah,
Well-
major redesign. Yes.
Yeah. And is this considered a capital improvement project then too?
Well, I think that'd be a stretch.
It's not.
But
So I was just wondering if there was an opportunity to do this more cyclically or sooner than like 11 years? Could you put it on like a contract with web text to do it or whoever you
yeah,
choose?
well, so two things on that to answer your question. First, you'll be happy to hear that this is happening within the scope of our contracts. There's no additional cost to this.
Okay.
The other part of that is that the new site, then when we roll out the new design, it will have feedback tools built in all the time, which we haven't had before to help improve our website. So I think what I'd like to do in the future is have more continuous improvement. And it's kind of been happening. It's just not necessarily captured anyway. So, and as technology changes, who knows what might need to happen. I mean, certainly certainly there's been changes because a website operating on a 2012 platform would probably not function very well. So there's been things in the background, just not any big lifts on my end. And, you know, lots of app updates and whatnot over time. But in terms of like the HTML design and the site architecture, it's been pretty much that the super menu and the sidebar menus. I think 2012, the big part of that change was a lot of mobile, the HTML3. So getting into the mobile first mindset. And I think we're finally starting to get there. We are more mobile than we ever have been before in terms of our visitors. So
fascinating information. Other commissioners, since I jumped right in there. Commissioner Moss?
Sure, just briefly, I'll say 700 pages is very large. I enjoy the report and I have a lot of tech background in website design, development and UX projects. And so good luck.
Oh, I thought you were going to volunteer. All right.
Commissioner Belknap?
Thanks, Shannon. This is great. Appreciate the numbers on this. And one of the things, obviously there's with putting our subcommittee meetings online, you know, that's another way of getting out there. Just a question, and this really isn't for Shannon, but maybe overall, are there other boards and commissions that we might consider adding into that, you know, online viewership? I'm thinking of our groundwater board because it's a very large board, lots of members. And, you know, so we have kind of a need for our board members to engage if they're in remote situations, but also just informational, making it, you know, available to our public. And so with that, I know part of the conversation, I think there's probably some changes coming with our boardroom here and the communication system per se. I didn't know if that created opportunities elsewhere within the facility for some of these other boards that meet here in this building to have, web meetings.
I think that's a great opportunity for more transparency through our boards if they are able. There's probably some dependence on where they meet and who is available to transmit, that sort of thing. I know that the mental health board has had similar questions and challenges with its room layout and that sort of thing, and is looking at maybe making some changes. I don't know. I just recall hearing it at one of the board meetings, not necessarily liking the layout with the audience in that particular room. And so I think, if the room lends itself to that and the capabilities, the meetings in here are easier to do so because it's all set up to do that. So I am open to it.
Yeah, I think what we might want to do there, Commissioner Belknap, is something like maybe go through all the commissions that meet and then maybe decide which ones we would like to have online. If we can accommodate those in a different room and put them online, we could look at that. This room is the easiest to do online, so we could do that if we needed. It'd just be a scheduling issue to make sure this was available for when those commissions had meeting, but that is certainly a process we can engage in.
Second question I had was with website redesign. In my past, I've been involved in delivering websites, and one of the things in a government situation, we have a responsibility for ADA accessibility for fonts and colors and that type of thing. So I didn't know if that was if that's always been a standard that's
Yes,
Ottawa
we
County
are.
has. Okay.
Yes. We are ADA accessible. And also, it's interesting that you bring that up, however, because that's also something that I do consider with social media posts and am considering with training, just reminding folks the way screen readers work. So if if a image is posted with a great deal of text, number one, most people are visiting from their mobile device and you can't see that small text. But number two, a screen reader doesn't read text in an image unless you add the alt text to the alt text field in the platform or in the scheduler, or whatever it is you're using. So there's a lot of detail involved in updates right down to ADA compliance. So.
And to that point, Roger, if I may interject as well, it's interesting you mentioned that because very preliminarily, I had the deputy county administrator look at what ADA means for our website. And the things that Shannon mentioned are, of course, considerations, but there's also this concept of plain language, which is considered part of ADA as well. In other words, the language has to be accessible. There's not necessarily a superset standard. There is like a federal committee on this, but something like fourth grade or fifth grade reading level or something like that, to make sure that people that may have reading disabilities or whatnot are still able to understand everything. So we did actually have a call with someone who's an expert on this and took down some information, and they're going to get back with us with some additional information as well, so we can see maybe what it would look like and what resources it would take to do something like looking at even the language to make sure it's as accessible and easy to understand as possible for the public. Those of us who are in the government or have worked in the government, you see, like, especially at the federal level, some of the jargon there, I mean, it's just absolutely a Klingon to understand what it looks like. So I think we're much better in that sense, but we do also want to make sure that things are as easy to understand as possible. So that's something we may have an update on at some point here soon as well.
Acronym directories are always welcome too.
Yeah. If we have to have an acronym directory on our website, then we have a larger problem. But definitely plain language and avoiding jargon is important. And it's something we need to consider, not just for ADA, but also for search engine optimization. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shannon.
Thank you.
And last on the agenda before public comments is number 3, status of 2024 initiatives, and that's with Administrator Gibbs.
Thank you, Chair Cosby. So obviously the big one here is the strategic plan. I think during my first period of time here, we were looking at the organization and seeing how things run and really taking in a lot. And now I think we're at a point where we're ready to jump in with a lot of what we've learned. And I think when we're looking at the strategic plan for this year, one of the key concepts is something that you mentioned, Chair Cosby, which is this concept of cost of service delivery. So we could say that we served X number of people in a program, and that may be good, or we may need to improve on that. But simply having a number in and of itself is sometimes difficult to know where that's at and how does it compare. So we want to be looking at things in terms of cost of service delivery. So how much did it cost to serve that one person in the program? And how much staff did it take to serve that one person? Like 0.78 or 0.84 or whatever it might be, or $12,000 and something per person served in that program. I think that is important because one, it gives us the ability to compare that to standards. So we can see how we're doing, both in terms of state or national standards. And it also lets us compare ourselves to other counties and see how we're doing comparatively to our neighbors. And it lets us set goals that are easier to target for, say, the coming year or coming 5 years. We want to improve upon those numbers. So I think looking at things in terms of cost of service delivery really empowers our departments to tell their story in a better way than the way we often look at things. And looking back at our budget process even, I think looking at things this way, if we had that in place, really could have answered a lot of the questions before they were asked. And that's why I think this is a pretty exciting thing to look at, because it will really be able to get people the information that they're wanting and needing right up front. So I think this whole concept of cost of service delivery is going to be a really important thing we look at as part of the strategic plan. This is something I've been socializing with all of the directors as I meet with them for my regular one-on-one check-ins. And we're going to begin the process of actually reaching out to them to have them start thinking about what kind of metrics look good or are meaningful for your departments along the lines of cost of service delivery. I have my own little recommendations, but I want them to really be at the table helping to drive this as well to make sure that the numbers we're getting are meaningful as part of that process. Blake alluded to the idea that having a third party help us out with these kind of things, I think is beneficial. I think that's the case here as well. So we may want to bring in someone or a firm that can really help us to get these down, both in terms of the data that we're collecting, in terms of helping to find data. There may be some instances where we need to have a little bit of Sherlock Holmes to be able to look at what standards are out there if they're not easy to find, or what other counties are doing if it's not super easy to find. So I think having that kind of resource will help. Also, just in terms of credibility and stature and things, having someone be able to come in and help us drive that process, I think has a lot of benefits to it. So I'm pretty excited about that. And once we start looking at things that way, I think we've got to present it in a way that's easy to understand as well. And our current strategic plan has got a lot of good information in it. But I think moving forward, we want to have something that's more of a dashboard type format than what we have now, in which the departments and the programs have a relatively standardized presentation in a dashboard type style. Of course, there will be differences in what metrics are being looked at and maybe even the number of metrics being looked at, but as much as possible, having standardization in terms of the format that we look at this data for the different departments, and maybe focusing more on that, maybe a little bit less in terms of the narrative. Of course, there will be some, but perhaps a little bit less of that, and more on the metrics and numbers that we're looking at. So we can easily see what our numbers are, how do those compare to where we want to be, how do they compare to our neighbors, and how do they compare to standards. And so I think that's what we want to be centering the strategic plan around going forward. So that's what we'll be building for that. That, of course, has an IT component to it because we want to have the interface for that. Budgeting software that we're going to be using may give us some of that, but we will see if there's any gaps there and if we need to do anything as far as being able to display that in a very easy to understand format for commissioners and all of our constituents out there. As well as one thing Shannon mentioned, even making it accessible in a mobile format so that people can access it that way as well, because lots of people look at things on their phone. So that is what we're looking at for a strategic plan. We do have a strategic planning committee that you created at the organizational meeting. I will have a presentation ready for that meeting with more detail on what we're looking at for the strategic plan. A couple of things that will kind of be concurrent with that are something that you might call a business process analysis. So that will be a pretty in-depth look at our departments to really analyze what are we doing well? How can we help to tell our story better in what we're doing? And also things that we might want to be able to improve, or, you know, say there's two departments that are using a vendor, two different vendors for something, but they could use the same vendor. We could economize that way and still get the same performance, things like that. And so we may use a third party for that as well to help us analyze that and systematically look at that process to see where we're at. I also envision the facilities usage study that facilities will be engaging in could be part of this as well. They are wanting to have, you know, look at our facilities, and I think that's going to be a very good process, and we can see how that plays in as well, and how that plays into their metrics in terms of what we're looking at in space usage and what we can do there. So that is kind of the biggest thing we're looking at going forward, is the information we're going to be taking in as we work together with the directors and the departments on a strategic plan, and being able to just really tell our story. It's what it's all about in terms of cost of service delivery in a way that's easy to understand. So that's a big one. Shannon kind of alluded to a lot of the communications updates. One thing I wanted to add a little bit more color to is right now, and for the past several years, it has been the case that the departments have to actually email a website update to someone, one of the web tech developers, and they have to manually update the websites, which is kind of a somewhat archaic way of doing updates to websites, which is why I asked her to go ahead and look at using a CMS, a content management system, which is a way for the departments to go onto an interface themselves, add the update themselves, and hit submit, and it will go automatically without having to have a person go and do the work for that update, which will free up our developers to do more developing and maybe less things like doing web updates. So I'm pretty excited about what the possibilities are there. And I guess that's the major initiative. Any questions at all?
Questions? Commissioner Haas?
Just a comment. I assume it is probably difficult to find some of the metrics or cost of service, you know, type of things publicly. I'm not overly familiar with seeing those on other county websites and different things that I've looked at. So I think, you know, making them easy to find, like you said, is then a really, you know, a big benefit to county residents. So in the future moving forward, so it'll be good. And then also maybe present an example for that other counties can look at.
Great,
So that's
absolutely.
great.
Yep.
Lead the way.
Mhm.
I have had some feedback from business owners that they are liking that we're trying to structure more in a business-like model, using, you know, business units as kind of that format. How we're doing our work here at the county.
Yeah, I believe Chair
It's
Cosby.
more relatable for them.
Yeah, thank you. You had mentioned even the idea of calling or viewing departments as business units, which I think makes a lot of sense in many ways.
Taxpayers are our customers.
Right, exactly. And again, I think it makes it easier for people to tell their story, for the county to tell its story.
Absolutely. Thank you. Anything else? Seeing no. All right, moving on to our last item, and that's public comment. If you have public comment, state your name, place where you vote, and you direct all comments to me, 3 minutes, and you know this, so.
Aaron over Spring Lake, that's where I live and vote, yes. Thanks. Chair Cosby, it was a little hard to hear you at the end. Something about, I know the business model, I heard that. But I want to remind everybody here that our government delivers public services. We are not customers, even though we pay taxes. We are residents and part of a community. A little leery of this idea of breaking down costs like that. My husband has worked in nonprofit all his life. He says they get asked to do this all the time, and it's impossible because public services, nonprofit services, they are, as the Habitat presenter also reminded us, we're all about building thriving communities, thriving populations. So I'm a little leery of that tack. Back to that Habitat presentation. My husband and I have been monthly recurring donors of Habitat for Humanity for a long time. And it's primarily because we really appreciate their desire to create a thriving community with diverse income levels, which is what I heard praised by Chair Cosby earlier as well. We also like the idea of supporting home ownership at the same time, a both and approach of affordable rental as well. At various points in my life, I have absolutely needed rental for short term. And if it's not affordable, then you are not able to accept the job that was offered that would move you to that community. That happened to me at least once. So there's that. And then I also wanted to say that Mr. Wilkinson began his presentation by saying he doesn't have to convince this body that we have a housing crisis in this county. I wish I saw more evidence of urgency about the crisis that is our housing crisis in Ottawa. In Ottawa County, I've mentioned this before, the Housing Commission had not been meeting regularly. I also discovered the last time I did try to attend the meeting virtually, which is the most recent time they met, I was told that link is no longer being provided. So now someone has to go to the meeting. I fail to understand why. I really got a lot out of the treasurer's report too, and the return on investment, safety and risk management emphasis that the treasurer brought to our attention, and that was praised as well. Well, I want to remind y'all that when you do your new meeting agenda section status of 2023 initiatives, you might want to remember that one of your initiatives as Ottawa Impact Majority Bloc on this board was to seriously underfund the public health department. So perhaps you'd like to invite them here to talk about how well that strategy is working for them and by extension for the residents. Because if you ask me, that's not a return on my taxpayer revenue to support public health when safety is compromised because of issues with staffing and other morale issues and just lack of funding, which leads to terrible risk management. So I would really like to hear that. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any further public comments? Going once, twice, seeing